Morning has broken.
And we are your consecrated hosts.
Yeah, Father Jeff.
Jonathan.
How's it going, everyone? Good morning.
Good morning. I tried to drink and nothing came out, but then it came out.
You're hydrated. How are you today?
Father Jeff, it seems like we've been doing this show forever. Like 20 years.
We have been doing, 20 years. Some of us have been doing it for 20 years.
Wow.
20 years. 20 years ago today was ordained a priest.
In the line of Melchizedek.
Archbishop Curtis there ordaining me as a priest.
Wow.
I know. Look at that. Little Oski being ordained. I was such a kid. 25 years old.
25 years.
Can you imagine?
Your birthday's coming up.
It means my birthday's coming up. Next Wednesday. I told you, this is an octave. We're going to talk about the significance of the 8th day today.
So were you 25 or were you about to be
25.
So you were about to be 26?
Yep, I was still in my 25th year. Because you cannot, that's the youngest you can be ordained a priest, 25. So I could not have been 24.
Oh.
No. Yeah. Yeah, it's been a long 20 years and a short 20 years. On the one hand, it seems like, have I ever not been a priest? I mean, my whole life has seemed like it's been priestly. And at the same time, it's like I've only been doing this for like the last 3 days.
But it's almost half your life.
It is. I mean, I don't think, yes. Yeah, I mean, it really is. It's almost half my life. Thanks for making me feel old.
No problem. I'm good at that. If you ask my wife Genevieve, I always say, like, things like, you know...
Boy, you look old today.
We're closer to 50 now than we were to, I don't know, 8th grade, something like that. I don't know. I mean, it's definitely that, because I was 14 in 8th grade.
Wow.
And now I'm 20 years after that. So, yeah, I'm definitely closer to 50 than I was
these things
when
happen.
I entered high school.
These things happen.
So
it's been good. I think back to those, it's kind of like all those things. You think back and can you kind of sort of
Happy anniversary!
Oh, wow.
And just know how lucky we all are to have you.
I don't know if you can all see. They're all standing out of camera. But hey, this is Phyllis.
Phyllis, you have to get way.
Oh, I have to get way over here.
This is Phyllis.
Get over
She
here.
reached into her closet and found a cake.
Found some cake, and Jackie, and Diane, and Larry, and here we are with a little tiramisu cake, apparently.
I'll share later.
Get the other one.
Yeah, we have another one.
No, but there's another thing in there.
Fantastic.
I'm gonna get everybody really quick. So there's Phyllis,
Phyllis.
making sure to keep her social distance, and there's Larry, our business manager, and Jackie, and Diane ran out of here because she
Diane
doesn't
ran
run
out
out
again.
again.
We've seen Diane.
Keep bringing something else.
The celebration
and there's Diane.
continues.
Oh.
And your cookie with the mask.
Oh, I have a cookie. A cookie
A little
with
Yoda.
a baby Yoda.
Oh, that is very fitting.
Cakes and cookies and 20 years of nourishment right here on today's show.
There you go.
Well, thank you all so very
Thank
much.
you guys.
Happy
That's awesome.
anniversary.
Thank
Happy
you.
anniversary.
Thank you. Oh, craziness. The craziness. Jonathan, did you know about that?
Know about what?
You know about what? I'm gonna pretend, yeah, well. Aren't you just funny? Wow. I have a piece of cake, but I don't have a fork.
Send a fork!
No, that's quite
No.
all right. We'll just put that out of the way there. But I might take a bite of this cookie because it smells very good.
Do you have any highlights from your 20 years of being a priest? Anything just that really stands out or any moments?
Nope.
Nope.
Um,
Meeting me, I know, is at the top.
meeting you is at the top. Oh, that's very nice.
Yeah. I'm going to try to get them to
Drop it on the floor.
Oh.
Look at that.
It almost made it to the floor.
Well,
that looks good.
It looks good. You can see it in the camera shot, I think, now. Yeah, it's, are there any highlights? There are so many highlights. I think they just all, I think it's just like, I don't know, marriage where you, can you really pick out the one? I suppose, the birth of children and those special encounters. But for me, it's strange because every assignment that I've had is you always think that it can't get better or that it's going to be so different, or I don't know. I guess I was ordained in June 2000, June 3rd, 2000, and my first assignment was I spent the summer at St. Bonaventure in Columbus. It was technically my first assignment. I actually had a letter of appointment. It was only for like 3 months. But I was there for the summer, and I kind of helped out and did some work there, getting the religious ed program kind of working, and youth group, and helping at the beginning of school. And then I went back for further studies in Rome, and I completed my licential degree.
What does that mean?
It's a pontifical degree in theology. My specialization is in sacraments, and so I did that for a year after my ordination, so then I came back in 2001, and my first then in parish assignment was at. Would you leave those balloons alone?
I want them to see the congratulations.
The first in parish assignment was St. Margaret Mary. So I was down at St. Margaret Mary there on Dodge Street.
Mm-hmm.
I was there for 3 years as an assistant pastor. Fond memories of kind of cutting my teeth and learning how to be a priest, really, and the good people there. And then after that, I went back to my hometown, and I was in residence at St. Isidore, my home parish, and I was on faculty at Scotus Central Catholic as the full-time chaplain and theology teacher. So spent 4 years there. I guess that was kind of a highlight, going back to the old alma mater and being able to give back. I really felt that was a good thing, that I'd received so much from that place and I was able to give back. So that was really kind of special. And likewise with my home parish. They dedicated the new church that was 40 years in the making. And so I got to be a part of the dedication of the new church.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it was very cool. And part of the design of the stained glass windows and other elements of the church. So that was beautiful. After 4 years there, in 2008, then I moved up to for my first pastorate, and I was in Holy Trinity and St. Michael's Parish in Hartington and Coleridge, respectively, and was up there also at Cedar Catholic and the high school. Taught there again, seniors, and that was a really special place because it first pastorate. So I remember St. Michael's and Holy Trinity very fondly, and the people that are there, because they really helped me learn what it meant to be a pastor.
They don't teach you those things in seminary.
You have to learn. I mean, so much is on-the-job learning as with anything, I suppose. Sure. And then after 8 years of being there, in 2016, then I was brought here to St. Charles, and have been here now going on 4 years already.
Wow.
So that's it's crazy. So that's where my priestly journey has taken me, and the different parishes and peoples that have jumped in along the way. And good that, and I always, when I think back or go back and visit a place, it's like I always feel like I need to apologize to those people for the person that I was back then. Because I look back on baby Father Lowski, and it's like, oh my gosh, I didn't know anything, and I thought I knew everything, and then I look back, and then I'm sure in 10 years I'll look back at St. Charles, Father Lowski, and want to apologize to all of you for
hopefully
the person that I was.
That just means you're growing and following God's will, and hopefully you're growing the right way. And
you have to be growing the right way. Oh my gosh.
And that's just same with our marriage, right? But with my marriage, I know so much more about being a husband and a father now than I did when I was a baby husband and then a
absolutely
first-time father.
And you just start to learn more about what's really important and what I really need to invest my time and energy in, and what I really need to be about, and then all of the things that you don't need to be about. And so that's, yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you. I know that there's people from past parishes that
all
watch
of those
this.
places, former students on
Yeah.
there, current and past parishioners, and it's good to see you all.
Even if you aren't completely happy with the person you were back then or whatever, if you're,
Are we ever?
you know,
Are we ever? You always look back.
You've
and kinda
definitely left a
cringe.
mark on the people you've
Hopefully not a
you've
scar.
interacted with. Yeah, hopefully not a scar.
Hopefully a mark
But
and not
the
a
fact
scar.
that they come back and they're watching and stay in touch, I just think it's a beautiful thing, and just know that we are so blessed to have you here.
It's
and
good to be here.
It's
It's good to be doing this, where you do reach out and touch so many people, and you can bring all of those experiences together. So, Jonathan, what's the highlight? Right now, the present. This
I knew
is the
it was
highlight.
me. I knew it was me.
Well, I don't know about There was that moment when you were standing over there and I had the set to myself. That was pretty special. Oh, well, enough about me.
Enough about you.
We'll come back to me later.
It's your birthday next
It's
week.
8 days of celebration. We'll talk more about that
What
later.
you said last night was the vigil of the.
Yeah, that's right. First Vespers
First
of
Vespers
the
of the
solemnity of
solemnity.
the ordination of my priestly self. So here we are, and on the 8th day, we'll celebrate my nativity.
Someone just asked what about my coffee cup. I took it home to wash it. I don't know if it's been washed. I don't know where it is right now.
He lost it. It's probably rolled under the car seat in
And
his
so
vehicle.
I've got my
You've got your green thing. Canister
canister water
canteen.
thing. Yep.
Yeah.
It's a little bit bigger. I need to bring a coffee mug back because this is just a little bit huge.
It's a little cumbersome. Yeah. So today, in addition to being June 3rd, 2020, it's always easy to remember what my anniversary is, because being ordained in the year 2000, my anniversary is always whatever the year is. So ordained 20 years, it's 2020. Yeah. So that, but in addition to today, it's also the feast of St. Charles Lwanga and his martyred companions. They were martyrs from Uganda, and young. I think most of them are young. Many of them were pages in the royal court, and taken advantage of and abused, and just especially for living their Christian faith and holding fast to their Christian values. And Charles really tried to step in and protect the younger boys and to protect those people who were finding Christianity and wanting to be Christian, and tortured and put to death for that. So, they really do become a model of, that youthful spirit that is alive in the church.
All of the young martyrs.
There's more young martyrs than, especially in the early church, those young martyrs.
The fact that they're willing to hold so strong onto their faith, and just makes you question. It's like, I hope that if given that opportunity, I would be as strong as them, to hold steadfast to my faith and not willing to renounce it.
It is something that I think often about. There's a number of writings. John Paul II was often fond of saying that the church is perpetually young. That there is a vibrant, that the Holy Spirit is constantly renewing the church and giving it new birth,
spirit.
A youthfulness, and there's it's ever ancient but ever new, and there's always something new that is being brought to life. And I think that's important because even the older I get, and this is probably true, I would imagine most people experience this, you tend to get, complacent's not really the right word, but you tend to get comfortable. And you tend to take fewer risks because you have more things that either I'm responsible for, or people in my care, or things that I've built up, and I don't necessarily, I've got to protect those things and this, that, and the other thing.
As a parent now, I would never go skydiving.
Sure.
Because I have my kids. And
Absolutely.
And there might be...
skydiving even without kids.
There might have been, 5 deaths a year in skydivers or whatever.
Sure.
A very low percentage. But you are falling from the sky.
It's an undue risk.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're taking an undue risk, and I think there is something about that when those of us who are older I'll put myself in that camp. I'm kind of in that middle group. I'm not going to say I'm in the older group yet. Let's say I'm in the
We'll
the
give it a few. We'll give it a few days.
media. I'm in the via media here.
I'm still in the younger group, but just with I'm edging out of the younger group.
There
I'd
you
like
are.
to
You're
say.
in the older part of the younger group.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I think that it's very inspiring to see the faith life of younger Catholics, particularly when they really embrace it.
Yeah, we have some people coming to daily mass when the
Oh my
youth group
gosh,
kids
college
come to daily
kids,
mass.
college kids are here for mass.
And it is when I was
Homeschooling kids are here for mass.
Yeah, when I was a focus missionary, a lot of times we'd go and we'd be traveling around doing other things, and we'd go as a group, and older people would stop us and be like, "Oh, where are you guys from? It's so great to see young people at mass."
Absolutely.
And we are already past college at that point.
Yeah.
But because it's you really seeing young people at mass without their parents,
Right.
is such an oddity.
Oh my gosh.
But those people are so strong,
And you
those
expect daily mass to be full of the retirees,
right?
Or the people out in the workforce on their lunch break. And so when you see young kids, when you see high school kids, when you see college kids, I mean, that's really amazing. Like all these college kids are sitting in a row at daily mass, and these high school kids, and they're just inspiring, because what I see too is I see a deep piety and devotion in their spirit, and it really makes me look in the mirror and say, what have I gotten careless with, or what have I just gotten used to and going through the motions, and do I remember to do these things and to have that much care? And so I am inspired by the faith of young people, and like Charles Lwanga and the martyrs and all of those young martyrs, what an inspiration. They have that fire, and they're unafraid.
Yeah, and that's the future of our church.
It is.
Those
always,
people are the future
always.
of our church.
Yeah, so I think that's one of my, I think it was a goal that I forget which vocations director or priest one time told us, but every one of us who are ordained, we have like an obligation to raise up and foster someone basically to take our place. that you need to be an inspiration to that next generation.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I've done that. I don't know if there's any vocations out there.
There's so much of a movement. So the best story I know of from my experience was I was a missionary at the University of Maryland, and Bowie, Maryland is 30, 45 minutes to east of that. And there's this parish there that had a priest named Hogan. I didn't know this priest, never met the priest, but he had a crew known as Hogan's Heroes. Wink, wink,
Awesome.
nudge, nudge. But it was
It's an old television show for those of you youngins who don't know that.
Yeah, sorry. I figure, judging from the demographic that we see,
You're calling our audience old?
no. If I know it, no, there's
That's
not
true.
many people younger
That's
than
true.
me.
Yeah.
So that it was just a group, especially of young men that he invested in, and just they had pride in being altar servers and doing everything, and it was just this group of guys, and they've grown up and stayed faithful to the faith and everything else, and it's just like, I remember it's Hogan's Heroes.
Yeah.
And it was a beautiful thing, and that's just, I think that's what we should, I hope my kids can follow along. The Sanchez Hidalgo, the Sanch Squad, is known as a force in the Catholic. That's what we refer to ourselves as the Sanch Squad.
The Sanch Squad.
And
Look at that.
I hope that when people see, Sanchez Hidalgo, those are good Catholics, and as parents, should be our goal, is that people recognize our family and see us. They may be disruptive, they may be crazy, they may be a little bit loud, but they know that they are strong in their faith, and that is the goal for my family. And as a priest, that children that grow up in this parish, that they know that they've received the knowledge of the faith, but also how to live out the faith. Yeah. And they've done it well, and that they can go out and live it in the world.
Yeah.
Because the hope is some of them come back, but most of them are going to leave and go other places. And you want them.
That's sad reality.
You want to send them out with a good strength and fire.
Absolutely, so
and
that
zeal.
even though they go out and go other places, they're not going to stray from the faith and from who they are in Jesus Christ.
Speaking of straying, we got to get to Dies Domini, or we're not going to get.
There's work to be done, even though we are celebrating with cake and cookies and coffee and all of those good things, balloons. We are, as you know, going through Dies Domini, the Day of the Lord. We kind of want to finish maybe chapter 2 today. So let's put this into gear, Jonathan.
All right.
And dive into paragraph 23. There is that, those early Christians, we talked yesterday about that there was no rhythmic Sunday, that
Right.
just wasn't a reality. And so the Jews had a Sabbath,
Mm-hmm.
and that was rhythmic for them. But those people who were coming from Judaism and became Christian, that was still part of their life.
Right.
And then there were all of those Greeks and other pagans who were being baptized and becoming Christian. That wasn't part of their life. So you had this diversity of practice growing up in the early church where the Sabbath, synagogue, meditation on the scriptures, the communal prayer, and then you had the Lord's Supper, the celebration of the Eucharist on Sunday. And so these two things were kind of
doing both of them.
Kind of doing both. There's this transition period where it's Sabbath and Lord's Day, and both of those are kind of being honored for a while.
Right. Well, and it makes sense because all of Christianity has its Jewish roots.
Absolutely.
And so...
I like to think of it as a flower. Like if this balloon here is a flower, that it's rooted in God, and that root is Abraham. And from Abraham grows this stock of Israel, and that stock of Israel comes to its point where it finishes here, this nice, beautiful, curly little ribbon, and that's Jesus Christ, the Messiah, who completes and brings that to its fulfillment, and then from him blossoms the church, the new people of God.
Can I just mention how the irony of you using this prop as a tool of how to show a flower when you have a vase of flowers right here?
Irony. I wanted something bigger.
Okay, that makes sense.
You get the point.
Imagine a flower.
Imagine a flower. Paragraph 24. So I think those early Christians transition from Sabbath to the Lord's Day, and it really is a fulfillment.
Mm-hmm.
That stem that all of Israel is reaching its peak, and once it has been fulfilled, you don't cut it off and drop it, but it becomes something else.
Right.
That the flower now, the church, the Lord's Day. The Sabbath has been fulfilled by Jesus Christ.
Something greater.
We're not waiting. We're not resting to see what new is coming. The newness has come.
Right.
And there it is. So we move from Saturday, and this happened, it kind of also happened because many of those Jewish leaders at the time kicked the Christians out of the synagogues and said, you can't be here anymore if you're going to preach the name of Jesus. That also facilitates the movement out and towards the Lord's Day. And so we move our celebration to Sunday. And so even when we reiterate the commandments, the third commandment, we generally, catechetically, no longer say, keep holy the Sabbath. We say, keep holy the Lord's Day, which is the fulfillment of the Sabbath rest. 24 and 25, chapters 24 and 25, really now see the Sunday as this day of new creation. So just as the first day of the week was creation, and now we're back on Sunday with the resurrection, there's a new creation.
Yeah.
And you see this even today. The church reenacts this new creation, especially in the waters of baptism.
Right.
That becomes the day when baptism is really celebrated, like on Sunday, on the Lord's Day. This is the day that the church gives birth. This is the day that you see new life happening. And so even at Mass sometimes, when there aren't baptisms, I like to throw around a little holy water.
Sprinkling.
Yeah, so on Sundays, we sometimes, especially during the Easter season, but really anytime during the year on a Sunday, the penitential act can be replaced by a sprinkling rite, which recalls our baptism, which recalls our regeneration, our rebirth in Jesus Christ.
Well, and every time we go into the church, as we dip our hand in the holy water,
unless you're in pandemic time,
in non-pandemic times,
empty thing.
It is a reminder of our baptism and that we belong to God.
That's why we make the sign of the cross. That's why we have holy water fountains at the doors and the entrances, because you remember your baptism. I am a child of God because of this.
I have been claimed for Christ.
Yeah, and so that's why we have the sprinkling rite and the holy water at the doors. So that brings us then to the 8th day.
The 8th day.
I told you we would talk about the 8th day today. The eschatological 8th day.
Yes.
That's a big word.
Eschatological.
The eschatological 8th day. Eschaton is a big fancy word for the end of times. The end that is approaching. That Jesus himself is the eschaton.
Well, we almost think of that as a fiery, the end of times is a horrible, terrible
The Lord's
thing.
day, the second coming, the parousia, the eschaton, all of these things. Fire and brimstone. I think it was even in yesterday's reading that the whole world will be consumed by fire.
Yeah, the loud noise. It just
the second letter of St. Peter, and that was and that's that eschatological 8th day. It focuses us on what is to come. That we don't live in the past, and even though we live in the present, we recognize that the fulfillment of the present is even coming to us today. That we think about time moving forward, that we are somehow moving towards the end of time, but the opposite is happening. You are standing in the present, and the end is coming to you. And you think of the end as not a thing or an event, but as a person. That there is a person coming toward you, and that is the Lord. So the end, the Lord, is coming toward you. That's the eschaton. It is not something to fear. You are not moving towards it. It is moving towards you. Which is, in some sense, that's you are standing in the present and always are. And that end is coming towards you.
And regardless of when you die, that is when the Lord arrives to you.
You will meet the Lord right there. So the idea is that when we talk about the eschatological 8th day, the first day of the week is the day when God begins creation. And he creates for 6 days. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on Friday. And then on the Sabbath day, he rests. And then we just kind of have that rotation, those 7 days. But in Jesus Christ, he follows the work of his Father. On the 6th day...
He rested on the 7th day.
But on the 6th day, on Friday, he completes his work. On the cross, he says...
It is finished.
It is finished. And then Jesus himself rests on the 7th day in the tomb.
In the tomb. Sorry.
And then, it doesn't just repeat. Something new happens. There is the resurrection. And then, so you tack on an 8th day to the week. It's like, the 7th day isn't the end. Boop! Something new has happened. The resurrection. But there's only 7 days in a week, so that 8th day is also the first day. The first and the 8th day are the same day. Creation becomes recreation. If you're musical, this is the octave. Middle C, and 8 notes later, you hit high C. And it's the same note, but it's elevated. It's creation, but it's elevated. It's our life, but it's elevated.
I don't know anything about music, but I understand the elevation. So
do re mi fa sol la ti do. See, you know music.
I know a little bit.
Yeah, do a deer, a female deer. This is our musical show. No,
it's a little late for that. And I thought it was beautiful the way it says. St. Basil explained how it's a day that'll know neither evening nor morning. It'll never grow old.
Always that newness again.
St. Augustine says it's the peace of quietness, the peace of a Sabbath, and a peace with no evening. And so just that eternal peace.
That eternal, no fear of the end, of darkness.
And so that 8th day is that eternity that we will have in heaven. It's a foreshadowing of that.
Yeah, it is. It really is. That the liturgy, what we do on Sunday is meant to be that little bit of foreshadowing. And again, keeping your eye fixed on that light. We talked yesterday a little bit about how those early Christians, when they would worship on Sunday, they would worship so early in the morning that they would see the sun rise, and it would be a reminder to them of the resurrection of Jesus. It also, as we see here in paragraph 27, that it helps people transition from the pagan worship of the sun to the Christian worship of the Son of God.
Sun to sun.
That's right. Sun with a U to sun with an O. That Sunday becomes not the day of the celestial
Because there's
sun.
been almost every pagan, community has worshipped the sun as a god.
Every human being probably in some way, shape, or form has, that the sun, before Judaism, Christianity, the sun is some kind of god. Because life comes from it, light comes from it, warmth comes from it, food comes, everything comes from the sun. Without the sun, there is nothing.
We are completely dependent on the sun.
Totally dependent on the sun. And so it does make a good stand-in for God. And I don't think, even though it's pagan, there is truth wrapped in that.
There is.
Because we are totally dependent upon that, and that is just a small sign of God himself. And so what a beautiful reflection to go from the sun to the Lord, the Sunday.
Right. Because he is the light of the world.
He's the light of the world that takes away the darkness. And I think we forget how deadly darkness was before electricity and before all of, what
we don't really know true darkness.
There was a book, and I forget the name of the book. Someone had recommended it, and I looked at it, and it's something about, the history of the human... It's, basically the history of night. And, why rhythms, or why people would, especially in religious communities, why they would get up in the middle of the night to do their prayers, how people lived during the night, because there was fear of burglars, or fear, you never traveled at night, it's just it gives you a whole different perspective of just how deadly and terrifying the night was. And we've kind of forgotten that in the age of electric and the electric light. Well, let's bring this to its end, Jonathan. Paragraphs 28, 29, and 30. We have this, not only is this the weekly recalling of Easter, but it's the weekly recalling of Pentecost.
Right.
Because it's Pentecost that allows you to see the risen Christ. Without the Spirit, you don't know Christ is risen from the dead. And with Thomas, then we say, my Lord and my God. I remember when I made my first Holy Communion, I got one of those little First Communion missals, and they had the little pictures of the priest in there and the little missalette kind of stuff. And in the middle of the consecration, there was a whole page where the priest was holding up the host, and then it just said, my Lord and my God on there, and then holding up the chalice, my Lord and my God. And, that was kind of ingrained in me, so that during the Mass, to myself, I would always say that during the elevations.
Sure.
When the host was raised. Even today, I do that. After I raise the host and lay it upon the altar, as I genuflect, I say, my Lord and my God. Dominus meus et Deus meus. My Lord and my God. I say it in Latin now, but I still say it. Dominus meus et Deus meus. My Lord and my God. Again, just those little reminders that what we're doing.
I think it's so powerful
big.
because I say something similar.
Yeah.
And it's just that verbal or, quiet verbal acknowledgement that is our Lord and our God.
Sometimes you see people strike their breast or bow their heads. Yeah.
It's because there's one thing where you're watching, you can watch, or you can
participate in
and say, this is my Lord and my God, and that makes it so much more tangible, so much more real.
Yeah, it's good to remind ourselves.
And it's
sometimes.
such a good reminder.
We have to remind ourselves that we have to remind ourselves that we are baptized in the name of the Father, Son, that's what we made.
Sometimes those bells aren't a reminder.
We have to remind ourselves. We have to say it, my Lord and my God. And so I think that's why John Paul closes out this chapter by reminding us that Sunday is the day of faith, and without it, we lose our Christian identity. That we are totally, totally dependent. Even though it's very hard, and he makes this point in chapter 30, that as the modern era moves on, it is harder and harder to keep Sunday. And without it, however, the pressures of today can make it harder to fulfill the Sunday obligation. But with a mother's sensitivity, the church looks to the circumstances of each of her children and feels herself called to a new catechetical and pastoral commitment in order to ensure that her people are not deprived of the graces that the Lord's Day pours out. So the church is trying to reach out. Whenever I prepare a couple for marriage and we talk about what does it mean to be a husband and father, what does it mean to be a man, what does it mean to be a woman and mother, a wife, and what does it mean? One of the things that I often reflect upon in my own relationship with the church is I am father and church is mother, and we have this nuptial relationship, and we form a family where we are brothers and sisters. And as father, I will often say to the kids, listen to your mother, or I'm going to beat you upside the head. And Mother Church is the one who gives birth to us from the font of baptism. She's the one that draws us right to her breast to nourish us with food that she provides. And, like a mother, she calls us to that dinner table every Sunday, and she says, whether you like it or not, you will sit around this table, you will be a family, you will talk to one another, you will like each other, and because that's who you are. And she's a good mom that way. She gathers us together and makes sure we do the most important things. So, indispensable. We need it to remember who we are.
Amen.
Amen to that. Jonathan, I've got some cake to eat.
You've got some cake to eat, and I just hope and pray that your next 20 years are even better than these last 20.
We can only hope. Have a good celebration today. Have a piece of cake for me.